Rebonjour à tous, merci si vous venez de nous rejoindre. Bienvenue à la journée de l'Observatoire Technologie et Souveraineté Numérique organisée sous le haut patronage de Bruno Le Maire en collaboration avec Télécom Paris. C'est une journée qui, vous le savez, est dédiée aux questions de recrutement de talents dans la filière cyber. Ce matin, vous avez entendu le récit de certaines entreprises partenaires, comme par exemple Capgemini Invent, Thales, EDF, Orange Cyberdéfense, Orange Business, aussi d'autres acteurs comme le Campus Cyber, l'ANSSI. Et bien cet après-midi, on continue cet échange d'expériences. On écoutera le groupe Crédit Agricole, Renault, mais aussi Valeo, ainsi que l'intervention de certains enseignants et alumni de Télécom Paris. Mais avant cela, on vous propose maintenant un voyage en Estonie. C'est le pays par excellence. En 30 ans, Tallinn a fait une énorme transformation et est devenu un écosystème numérique qui a vu émerger énormément de licornes, notamment Skype ou Taxify, et une administration aussi qui est entièrement dématérialisée et qui sécurise les données de ses citoyens avec des technologies comme de l'identité numérique ou encore de la blockchain. Tout de suite, on vous propose d'écouter Merle Maigre. C'est un senior cybersecurity expert qui travaille au sein de la e-Governance Academy en Estonie.
As the Program Director of Cybersecurity at e-Governance Academy in Estonia, I'm responsible for keeping up a team that stands ready to guide governments, safeguarding their digital way of life and keeping up their cybersecurity. More specifically, we at the e-Governance Academy help to support the following cybersecurity capacities, that is governance and policy, legal frameworks, critical information infrastructure protection, incident response, and awareness building. More generally, perhaps, it's relevant that the e-Governance Academy of Estonia is an independent, non-profit organization that acts as an implementer of various development aid cooperation projects. This means that we consult emerging economies about the state of their digital situation, how they can have a good overview of their people, of their businesses, land, real estate, and how to make all that digitally usable as well as cyber secure. Yes, it all started from scratch. In regaining independence back in 1991 from the Soviet occupation after being occupied for 50 years by the Soviets, Estonia really was at the level of something like 1930s. We were small, we were poor, and we were 50 years behind. We had missed all the various infrastructure that was built in the Western Europe throughout those 50 years. But on the other hand, the only area where we in Estonia were on an equal level with the West in early 90s was the internet revolution, because that was when the internet got started by Tim Berners-Lee inventing World Wide Web and Mark Andreessen coming up with the first ever web browser. So this was where the Estonian political decision makers recognized that the promise of technology as a means of boosting the country's economy, that was where Estonia could be an equal level player with other Western countries, Western European countries. With no legacy systems, Estonia may even have had a little bit of a more a positive starting position when that could have become an advantage. So, for example, instead of a paper-based land register, we immediately created a digital one. So that was where history played a role in how it all started. Well, you could say so, because having accepted that we would go digital in this country, especially what regards the government services and the government's interaction with its citizens, we went to pioneering a new way of government. An important part of this was a political decision to provide a legal basis for digital identity for all the citizens back in the year 2000. That meant that we linked personal identification code to the population register to make it possible to use a digital signature. This step in turn meant that a person's digital identity becomes as important as a passport, and the digital signature becomes as important as a physical signature. That has allowed to boost various digital services and has allowed to do a lot of it online. But it is, of course, important for Estonia to make sense of what a human-centered digital state means and how to smartly develop it so that it would be convenient for the user, so that services are close to citizens and convenient to use, which, for example, means that the state services should become available in the technological gadgets that people are using. That was a curious story, because back in 2007, Estonia's advanced digital infrastructure was hit by cyber attacks during a period of heightened political tension with Russia over a Second World War monument. Several Estonian private and public online services fell victim to malicious cyber operations. In retrospect, of course, these were fairly mild and simple DDoS attacks, far less damaging of what the world has seen in later years. But back in that time, this was the first time in history that a state-sanctioned cyber attacks were used to advance political goals. At the time of attacks, for example, I myself was living and working in Ukraine, in Kiev, while my 2-year-old son and husband stayed in Estonia, our home country. And one of the personal recollections I have from that time was that for several days I was unable to get any information of what was really going on in Estonia, because of the country's governments and media services were paralyzed. Outside access to virtually all Estonian digital services was blocked as the Estonian Computer Emergency Response Team cut networks off from the outer world, isolating the country's system to allow them to recover from the attacks. So as the aftermath of the attacks, there was a conscious decision of the government back the day to be transparent and to overcome that initial somewhat embarrassment of admitting that Estonia was under attack. And once that decision was made that Estonia wants to be transparent about it, it allowed Estonia to put the question into various international forums, including, for example, into NATO. And the 2007 incident in Estonia set off a still ongoing debate in NATO on the role of cyber operations and on the changing nature of cyber conflicts. And one of the counter steps that NATO then decided to take was to accredit the NATO Cyber Center of Excellence in Tallinn. So, as often happens, the Russian attack resulted in Estonia becoming even stronger in cyber.